I call Kevin Haig.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. Earlier this evening, my colleague Catherine Delahunty referred to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which of course is a way of thinking about basic human needs that need to be met in order for a human being to achieve their potential. And what we've seen from the government this evening is also an approach based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We've seen them defeat the Feed the Kids bill and then David Shearer's version, alternative solution to the same problem. The right to food, the need for food is one of those basic rights. Another of those basic rights is the need for warmth and shelter. And it seems that the government's intending to vote against this as well. So it appears that rather than approaching those basic needs on the basis of trying to progressively meet them all, which actually is kind of the purpose of government, the government is instead intent on destroying all of those needs and ensuring that they are not met. Mr Speaker, if I were Matt Ducey, I would be embarrassed. The man's come from a health background, and therefore he must know that health status is driven by environment, by the environment that people and communities find themselves in. And there is no more direct kind of environment than the housing that we live in. And the evidence is abundant. Phil Twyford captured a small summary of that in his opening contribution, that housing in New Zealand is one of the major drivers of ill health in this country in two ways. First of all, through overcrowding. And the government's failure to ensure an adequate supply of housing is condemning New Zealanders to live in overcrowded conditions that feed respiratory and skin infections, that feed rheumatic fever and even more serious conditions. But the second way, Mr Speaker, in which poor quality housing drives ill health is through that housing being cold or damp or drafty or mouldy. And that is the condition that this bill sets out to address. And Mr Speaker, both of those problems are getting worse. Overcrowding because of the shortage of supply and because in particular of the decreasing affordability of housing in this country. But the poor quality housing is getting worse because it acts as a safety valve for the government's failure to provide affordable housing. That's right, Mr Speaker, and Matt Ducey's opening contribution, in fact, said pretty much that. It said that they were worried that this would force up rental costs. And Mr Speaker, as Dennis O'Rourke has said, that it's unlikely to result. But what that means, Mr Speaker, is that the government has a balanced solution from its point of view. It provides poor quality or enables landlords to provide poor quality, shoddy housing, and that enables it to get away with, in fact, not ensuring that there is affordable housing available to New Zealanders. It's a disgrace, Mr Speaker. The Green Party, as Metiria Ture has commented already this evening, has worked for many years on this issue of quality of housing. And in particular, Jeanette Fitzsimons was an absolute battler for ensuring that houses were as well insulated and energy efficient as they could be, working first with Labor and then with National to ensure that our insulation schemes were progressed. Mr Speaker, we have our own bill that's a different approach to Mr Twyford's that's in the ballot. But we will be supporting his bill tonight. Any of the problems that the government has addressed in their contributions tonight could and should be addressed by the Select Committee. That is the proper process for legislation. And Mr Speaker, it seems to me it's an unusual state of affairs where we have tenants, we have landlords, and Sir, I notice that the Property Investors Council speaks to Mr Twyford and myself. It's a bit of a worry they're not speaking to the government. So tenants, landlords and the health professionals all saying this is what we need to do. So why won't the government do it or allow it to be done?